What is it like to be you? Not your name, not your memories, not your personality, but the raw fact that there is something it feels like to exist right now. In this moment, light is striking your eyes, vibrations are entering your ears, signals are traveling along nerves at incredible speed, and yet, what you experience is not electrical activity. It is color, sound, meaning. You are aware. But what is this awareness? Is it just neurons firing in intricate patterns? A biological machine simulating an inner world? Or is consciousness something deeper, something that cannot be reduced to matter? Tonight, we explore one of the most profound mysteries in philosophy and science: the nature of consciousness. When philosophers speak about consciousness, they usually mean subjective experience, the redness of red, the bitterness of coffee, the sharp sting of a headache, the warmth of falling in love. These are often called qualia, the raw, first-person qualities of experience. Science can describe the wavelength of light that corresponds to red. It can describe how taste receptors respond to molecules. It can explain how pain signals travel through the nervous system, but none of those descriptions capture what red looks like, what coffee tastes like, what pain feels like. This difference creates a deep philosophical puzzle. Imagine a scientist who knows everything about the physics of color vision, every equation, every neural pathway, but has lived her entire life in a black and white room. When she steps outside and sees red for the first time, has she learned something new? Many philosophers argue, yes, she has learned what red is like. That what it's like aspect seems to resist purely physical explanation. And this is where the mystery begins. Modern neuroscience has revealed astonishing details about the brain: 86 billion neurons, trillions of synaptic connections, endless electrochemical signals firing in coordinated patterns. We can now place someone in an fMRI scanner and watch regions of the brain activate when they recognize a face, recall a memory, feel fear, make a decision. The dominant scientific framework is physicalism, the view that everything that exists is ultimately physical. Under physicalism, thoughts are patterns of neural activity. Emotions are biochemical processes. The self is an emergent property of complex computation. On this view, consciousness is not magic. It is biology. Several influential theories attempt to explain how awareness arises. Global workspace theory. Proposed by cognitive scientists like Bernard Bars and developed by others, this theory suggests that consciousness functions like a spotlight. Information becomes conscious when it is broadcast across a global workspace in the brain, making it available for reasoning, speech, and decision-making. Integrated information theory. Developed by neuroscientist Giulio Tononi, this theory proposes that consciousness corresponds to the degree of integrated information within a system. The more unified and irreducible the information structure, the greater the level of consciousness. These approaches aim to solve what philosopher David Chalmers calls the easy problems of consciousness. How does the brain process information? How does it integrate sensory input? How does it generate behavior? These problems are easy not because they are simple, but because they are solvable in principle through standard scientific methods. But then we confront something deeper. In 1995, David Chalmers introduced a term that would reshape the debate: the hard problem of consciousness. The hard problem asks, why do physical processes give rise to experience at all? Why isn't the brain just a highly sophisticated biological computer processing information in total darkness? Imagine building a robot that behaves exactly like a human. It talks about feelings. It avoids pain. It writes poetry. Would it feel anything? Or would it merely simulate experience? This thought experiment leads to the idea of a philosophical zombie. a being physically identical to you, but with no inner experience. If such a creature is conceivable, then consciousness might not be logically reducible to physical structure alone. Even if neuroscience mapped every neuron and predicted every behavior, we would still only have a third-person description. But experience is first-person. This is the explanatory gap, the gap between objective description and subjective reality. Philosophers have proposed radically different answers. 1. Physicalism. Consciousness is entirely physical. Given enough scientific progress, we will explain it completely in terms of neural mechanisms. From this perspective, the hard problem may dissolve, much like the mystery of life dissolved once we understood biology. 2. Dualism. Famously associated with René Descartes, dualism argues that mind and matter are fundamentally different substances. The mental cannot be reduced to the physical. But dualism faces a serious challenge. If mind and matter are separate, how do they interact? How does an immaterial thought cause your arm to move? 3. Panpsychism. An increasingly discussed view proposes that consciousness is a fundamental feature of reality, like mass or charge. On this view, even elementary particles may possess extremely simple forms of proto-experience. Complex consciousness, like ours, would then arise from combinations of simpler experiential units. Rather than emerging from matter, consciousness may be woven into the very structure of existence. 4. Eliminativism. Some philosophers argue that our common-sense understanding of consciousness may be deeply flawed. What we call qualia could be a misleading concept, one that future neuroscience will replace entirely. But this position is controversial, because even doubting consciousness seems to presuppose it. To deny experience, one must experience denying it. This debate is not merely academic, it shapes how we understand. Artificial intelligence. If consciousness is computational, could advanced AI systems become conscious? Animal ethics. Do animals have rich inner lives? If so, what moral obligations follow? Medicine. How should we treat patients in vegetative states? How do we detect awareness? Personal identity. Are you just a biological machine? Or something more than matter in motion? If consciousness is purely physical, then in principle it could be replicated, perhaps even uploaded. If it is not reducible to matter, then our current scientific worldview may be incomplete. Despite centuries of philosophy and decades of neuroscience, there is no consensus. We can stimulate regions of the brain and alter experience, damage areas of the cortex and erase memory, track neural correlates of perception. But we still cannot answer the deepest question. Why is there something it is like to be a brain? Consciousness is the one phenomenon we know most directly, and yet it is the hardest to explain. You can doubt the external world. You can doubt other minds. You can doubt even your own memories. But you cannot doubt that you are having experience right now. That undeniable immediacy is both the starting point of philosophy and its greatest mystery. The universe has produced stars, galaxies, black holes, life, and somehow, from stardust and gravity, from atoms and chemistry, from blind physical laws, there emerged awareness. Matter has begun to experience itself. Is consciousness an emergent property of complexity, a fundamental ingredient of reality, or a problem born from the limits of human understanding? Whatever the answer, it may redefine science, reshape philosophy, and transform what it means to be human. Thanks for watching. If this video made you pause, question, or see things differently, then it did its job. Feel free to explore more ideas here, and as always, keep thinking.